Video starts on a white screen. The Microsoft logo appears. The screen fades to black. A green background featuring the letters A and I appears, followed by a slideshow showcasing new technologies.
AI for Accessibility is a Microsoft program committed to influencing the future of technology to empower people living with disabilities. Whether reimagining the future of accessible education, building experiences that are accessible for people of all abilities, or developing AI-powered technology to make the world more inclusive, we are pushing the limits of what AI can do.
Hi, everybody, and thank you for tuning in today. Together with me is Tim Altaf from University of Washington, and we will be talking about how the research they did in terms of AI and human interaction. Tim, do you want to tell us more about the body of research your team has been doing over the last years?
We've been interested in this conversational skill of empathy and how we can all communicate empathy more effectively. Empathy is a central skill to kind of many conversations and many settings, but it is especially important in the context of mental health, whether it's a counselor or a therapist, or in our case, peer supporters, who can really benefit from expressing empathy more effectively to create a real connection with another human being. So we were interested in the context of peer support, which is really important because so many people around the world do not have access to professional mental health support. So many people have to rely on peers to get support. But the challenge is that while those peers are often amazing and motivated, and they spend their time and energy to support others, they're not trained in it. And we had the sense that AI technology might be able to help people support others particularly effectively, and we focused on the skill of empathy specifically.
And with peer-to-peer interactions, I can put myself in the shoes of a peer supporter wanting to show up, genuinely and empathetically, but it's not always easy. And how is AI helping with that in a format that it's not overly prescriptive or doesn't take away from the human element, which is so important in these scenarios?
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. It's incredibly challenging to support others in need. We even if we know the other person well and we deeply care for them, it might still be hard to know exactly what to say and what's kind of the right thing to say in a given moment. And that's why we train professionals extensively to support others. And for peers, it can be really challenging. And on these peer support platforms, they may not even know you at all or don't know you very well. So it's a really challenging situation. And it really strikes me that we expect so much from people and to get these things right. And all we give you is this empty text box without any support. Now, this peer support could be a lot more effective. We know that from studies in the context of mental health. If only peer supporters were better trained or were following best practices of support, the support could be more effective. In most cases, they're already really motivated to do so. One thing that happens often is that people maybe jump a little quickly to make suggestions or recommendations. Hey, you should do this, or hey, you should do that, and maybe kind of skip over first creating this connection, for instance, through responding with empathy. So how artificial intelligence technology can support this is to give you personalized recommendations when you don't know what to say and you want to have a little feedback, maybe to help you write your response, or maybe you've written a response and you want to get some feedback on this response. This technology can give you feedback in similar ways how maybe Microsoft Word would give you feedback on spelling and grammar. We can give you feedback on how you can best express empathy. And your question also brought up, how do we not take away from this human kind of element, which was kind of incredibly important and was very clear from the start that this was a potential risk, that kind of we don't want to take over this conversation and kind of where there's this really kind of the key element being this human-human connection. And while we want to support people the best we can, we don't want to take away from this connection or away from them or away from their agency. And we designed our system in order to do that as little as possible. We were kind of thinking about this as kind of an AI in the loop paradigm on a backseat, kind of with human supervision. We knew from prior research that when you respond in very templated, generic terms, like, hey, I'm so sorry to hear that. That must have been really hard for you. Like, that's not the worst response, but if you always get this response, it will start sounding really templated and canned or perhaps robotic, and people really don't like that. So we knew that whatever system we develop, it would have to be able to be on a back seat and only kind of get active if it's really needed. If it is needed, to give the most minimal feedback possible while helping somebody express empathy, and then also be very specific and personalized to the current conversation in the context in which it's invoked.
I love that, and I love the fact that this is meant to help. It's not meant to substitute, and I think that that is one of the common fears with AI. Does it take away from the human? Which in this case, it actually aids the human. So that's incredibly important. I know your team has done extensive research and analyzed the data in terms of the interaction, in terms of pure peer-to-peer interactions without the AI elements, and then analyzing results compared to when the AI was in the loop and how supporters felt about the interaction as well. Not to put you on the spot, but can you tell us a little bit about the data or what showed to work best in terms of those dynamics and what supporters preferred as well?
Yeah. So the first thing we learned when we built models that can recognize or measure empathy that's expressed in text, we were wondering whether people on this platform even care about empathy. Would it actually be associated with any positive outcomes? We went through kind of great length to really capture a clinical psychology construct of empathy. So while I recognize we all have some colloquial understanding of empathy, it's a really deep and complex and nuanced construct that clinical psychologists have thought about for decades. But there's no guarantee at all that people on social media would really care about kind of that kind of exact definition of empathy. But it turns out they did. So we learned by looking at hundreds of thousands of conversations on the Talk Live peer support platform that whenever empathy was expressed, it was received positively. And by that, I mean that people liked these responses more often, they would reply to them more often. And we also saw signs of relationship formation. So if you respond to me with empathy, I would be about 80% more likely to follow you immediately after this conversation compared to a non-empathic response. And that makes a lot of sense from the empathy literature. It's been shown that it often correlates to relationship formation, for instance, also with a counselor or with a therapist. And that made us feel confident that however we're measuring empathy, that it might actually be meaningful to people on this platform. But we also saw that people missed many opportunities to express empathy well. So the empathy scale we developed went from 0 to 6. 6 was like an amazingly empathic response. 0 was not expressing empathy at all. And then we looked at hundreds of thousands of instances where we really felt this was a great time to express empathy, where somebody was really sharing something really vulnerable with another person they didn't know yet. And even in those situations, on average, peer supporters scored a 1 out of 6, which could be worse, but it could also be a lot better. And we saw this as a big opportunity that this kind of AI feedback could really help them, because it was clear that without more training, without feedback, it wasn't happening. And then we evaluated this AI system we developed called Haley, and we performed a randomized trial with peer supporters from the Talk Live platform, 300 of them. We would split them. About 150 would go into the control condition. So they would basically just respond to posts as before without any feedback. And then in the treatment condition, people had access to this feedback agent. They didn't have to use it, but it was there in case they wanted it. And it turned out that in this treatment condition where people do get feedback, people expressed about 20 to 40% more empathy, which was really exciting to see. And people used it in a variety of different ways. They might kind of implement the feedback that given by this AI feedback directly, but some also kind of asked for multiple kinds of feedback, or they would use it more loosely as inspiration. And they would kind of make it their own message, but kind of be clearly inspired by the feedback, writing something kind of similar. But at the end of the day, what was really meaningful to see is that people did use the system. It did help them express empathy more effectively. And one thing that was also really meaningful is about 69, so over 2/3 of peer supporters, 69% expressed that they felt more confident in supporting others after the study, kind of indicating increased what we call self-efficacy. So it was really meaningful to us to really empower them to be kind of great supporters and to feel confident that they have the ability to do that because we're so grateful and in fact relying on them to support others. And what we really didn't want to do is that this kind of AI system would take away, as we talked about, away from this human connection, that maybe I would give you feedback, oh, you're not doing great, and kind of make you feel like, like maybe I shouldn't be doing this. Like this would be the opposite of what we want. And we were thankful to see that, again, over 2/3 of peer supporters felt more confident to support others in need.
I always like to ask for homework for the audience. So you can either give them homework in terms of taking an action or sharing where they can find your research and actually reading more about it. So what would be your homework for the audience?
So as a homework, I'm going to invite you to learn about empathy yourself. We have videos and papers and presentations and lots of materials online. The URL for that is bdata.uw.edu/empathy. And I invite you to learn about empathy, look at a couple of the examples of how you can respond to others with empathy. And I'm sure as you go through the next week or so, you will find somebody in your own circles that could really use an empathic response. And I'll just invite you to practice and see whether some of this feedback and learning about empathy can help you be there for others as well.
I love that homework, team, and thank you so much for joining us today. It's always great talking with you, and thank you for sharing more about the Empathy Project. And for everybody joining, thank you for tuning in today, and thank you for being interested in bridging the disability divide.